Good morning. Good morning and happy 2021. It is great to be on the other side of January 1st. I hope that our aspirations for the coming year all come true. It's great to have you with us this morning. It's great to be with you. As always, it's great to have those who are in the sanctuary with us. Daniel Goodsit and John Forsyth, Stu Shelton at the piano, and our worship associate, Lena Neal. Welcome to you all, and welcome, Lena.
Thank you very much, Tony. And Happy New Year to all, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. As Tony said, I'm Lena Neal, your worship associate for this, the first service of 2021, and what we anticipate will be a brighter year in many respects. UUCGN is a place where we are encouraged to grow spiritually in fellowship with others through worship and online opportunities that offer education, reflection, and discussion. We try to do all this in the spirit of love and acceptance, reaching out with our hearts, offering mutual support in these times of separation. I'd like to send out special greetings to those who have joined our community since during the pandemic. We are glad that you found us, and thank you for being here. Please remember the live chat, which is going on right now on your YouTube page. Say hello to fellow members, friends, and visitors. How do you find out about all of the excellent things that are going on here at UUCGN? Well, there's several ways. One, check out our website, which is at uunaples.org. Contact our administrator at office@uunaples.org to receive emails and Sunday morning news. Join our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week virtual coffee hour on Facebook. Now, there's some special notes that I want to add for today. Tomorrow evening, Monday, January 4th at 7 p.m., the Mindful Monday Forum returns, and it presents Ellen Hemrick speaking on creating an anti-racist beloved community. There are also a couple of other reminders. Do you remember First Fridays? Aren't you tired of being confined and cut off from all your friends at UUCGN? Wouldn't you like an opportunity to mingle for a little New Year's cheer? Well, we may not be able to meet on our lovely pavilion, but we can share each other's company for a while at a special upcoming Zoom event. So at 5 p.m. this Friday, January 8th, put your feet up, pour a glass, and join us in a time of fellowship. We'll enjoy music from Stu Shelton and his trio, and we'll make the arrangements to see each other and chat in small groups. You will also see an inspiring video that Bill and Maria McCormick have produced. The link to join in the fun will be sent in an upcoming news blast. Now, another item. Join us and begin considering the fact that our annual campaign is going to begin shortly. And the annual campaign is so critical to the operation of our congregation. Next Sunday will mark the official start of our pledge campaign. So please join us. Consider what UUCGN means to you and how you will support its work and our mission in the coming fiscal year. Look for more details coming your way this week. Now, let's center our hearts and our minds as Stu plays this morning's prelude.
The womb of stars embraces us. Remnants of their fiery furnaces pulse through our veins. We are of the stars, the dust of explosions cast across space. We are of the earth. We breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. Their cells nourish the soil. We build our communities on their harvest of gifts. Our fingers trace the curves carved in clay and stone by forebears unknown to us. We are part of the great circle of humanity gathered around the fire, the hearth, the altar. We gather anew this day to celebrate our common heritage. May we recall in gratitude all that has given us birth. Let's join together in our chalice lighting response that you'll see on your screen. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment we gather this day, may the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the unity we seek. And let's join together in singing our opening hymn, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. All creatures of the earth and sky, come kindred, lift your voices high. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Cool flowing water, pure and clear, make music clear to hear. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Dance, flame of fire so strong and bright, and bless us with your warmth and light. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. All you of understanding heart, forgiving others, take your part. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Let all things now our loving bless, and worship life in humbleness. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. The first scientific principle I learned as a young student was Bernardi's Law. Now, if you're not familiar with Bernardi's Law, that wouldn't necessarily be surprising. You see, Mr. Bernardi was my 7th grade science teacher, and the law that his students learned early on was that if you weren't prepared for class, that is, if you didn't come with your homework assignment, you would feel the heat. Now, Bernardi's Law had two parts, two principles. The first principle of Bernardi's Law was a simple expression of cause and effect. No homework resulted in a 1/2 grade reduction on that portion of your overall grade. Now, Mr. Bernardi was clear in his generosity in that we all started the year with an A+ in our homework grade. But for every assignment you missed, that grade would diminish by a half. A+ to A to A-, to B+, to B. I won't tell you where I was on that scale. Now, the second principle of Bernardi's law actually carried greater immediate or social consequences. So the second principle was lack of effort outside the class meant more effort inside the classroom. Now, if there were chores to be done or messes to be cleaned up, those who had not done their homework would be the ones chosen to do that. So if being called to erase the chalkboard in the middle of class didn't automatically tell people that you had failed to do your work, Mr. Bernardi would make it abundantly clear when, inevitably, he would call on those delinquents during the course of class to answer the questions that they would know if they had done their homework assignment. I actually liked Mr. Bernardi. He was tough, but he was fun and fair. And he was one of those few science teachers that I ever had who instilled a love of learning, a curiosity. Now, I was inspired by other things in terms of science. Certainly my own walks in the woods at that age were just wonderful for me. I enjoyed those and wanted to know more about nature. And like many of you, watching the nature episodes of Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color were fabulous. I really enjoyed those. But I don't remember another teacher like Mr. Bernardi who was able to communicate his passion for the subject. He would regularly hold science bees in class to make things fun, and he would occasionally offer stargazing nights out on the ball field next to the school so that we could watch the planets through the telescope or even see Sputnik fly by. He was inspiring because through his words and his attitude, he communicated his own awe, wonder, and respect for science and for nature. And he was infectious. Now, you wouldn't think that that would be such a rare commodity, especially in the 1960s when science was being touted as the answer to so many of humanity's problems. But I don't remember another science teacher, at least in secondary school at least, that had that same quality. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we are counseled to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. We believe that a meaningful religious perspective must be fully compatible with a scientific understanding of the universe in which we live. And far from reducing religion to something irrelevant, we believe that the wonders of the universe, known and unknown, lead us to a deeper reverence for life and a clearer understanding of our place within the interdependent web of all things. So, our first principle this morning is to understand our responsibility in supporting a quality public education where excellent teachers can bring a passion for their subject and their gifts of communication to all our children, so that our children may in turn gain a strong respect for how science works and what it offers humanity, but also the critical thinking skills that allow them to discern truth from fiction. Let's take a deep breath before we sing, and then center ourselves into our time of sharing and meditation with our centering hymn, How Could Anyone? How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? how deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. January 3rd, 2021. Shall we all take a deep breath and welcome in the new year with that readiness? We are grateful for the passing of the new year and our hopes for the coming. We are so grateful for everyone who has worked and struggled to make 2021 at least survivable. Those next to us in our homes, those in hospitals and research labs, clinics across the country. We pause to remember those many, many thousands of people who have lost their lives to a virus, and hope that the now ongoing distribution of a vaccine will quickly alleviate so much suffering. Alice Modick's mother, she reports, Sally McClintock, has been diagnosed with COVID-19, along with 75 other residents and 21 staff members at her long-term care facility in Tacoma, Washington. Fortunately, Sally has experienced only mild, yet still very uncomfortable symptoms of the virus in her now 11th day. And so Sally and her children hope that that will continue and have hopes for full recovery. And of course, the family wishes the best to all those at the facility who are struggling with that. The good news there is that the vaccine will be started to be distributed there at the end of the month. And she, if she recovers, will receive her first dose on the 24th. Alice wanted to especially thank the people at the Tacoma Lutheran Center for their loving care of her mother and all those other residents. Good news from Rosemary and Lance Horn, who are delighted to report that their daughter in Denver gave birth early, unexpectedly early, on December 31st to her first child and their fifth grandchild. After some tense hours, the mother and baby are doing well. Baby's name is Amelia Rose. And Rosemary and Lance, in their own words, are over the moon. Always good to have that kind of good news at the first of the year. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to be shared during Sunday morning service, then please send me an email before Saturday sometime so that I can put it in there. And of course, if I see it, anytime after that will work as well. But to be safe, if you can, get it in early. And there's also the Caring Corner news that goes out usually on Monday and Tuesday each week. So we can include your notice in that, as well as or instead of the Sunday morning joys and sorrows. Let's center ourselves into a time of meditation. Spirit of life and love, God of our deepest understanding, we have found our way through a difficult year and begin another, hoping against hope that it will be what we see as possibility, what we imagine controlling the virus, common sense in governance, equality for more and more people. We take time each week to hold these hopes in our hearts and minds, allowing our imaginations to work on our own ability to make change in whatever small way we can. We hold this space of promise to find the best we can be in ourselves and each other as part of a faith community, as part of a wider community, as part of a larger society. We have such great gratitude for life, for the gifts we've been given, the heritage that we have been allowed to pass on to those that come after. May we continue through this year to live in gratitude, in love, and grow even closer together towards that day when we can actually come together in person as a congregation, celebrating our resilience, celebrating our love. Let's take some time in silence.
The following passage is from theologian Paul Razor's book, Faith Without Certainty. Razor is a Unitarian Universalist minister and the director of the Center for the Study of Religious Freedom at Virginia Wesleyan University. He writes, "It is important not to lose sight of the emotional dimension of our meaning-making activities. Our most important beliefs and values are always wrapped in emotions. We get upset or excited over things we care about, things that matter to us. If we are to find meaning in our religious ideas and symbols, it is essential that they not only make sense intellectually, but also sit well emotionally. If they do, we can accept our worldviews with a degree of comfort and satisfaction. If our intellectual conceptions of reality don't feel right, whatever meaning they give us will be incomplete. At the same time, while religious meaning is different from, although it overlaps with, the meaning offered by science and other cultural contexts, our religious understanding of the world and our place in it must also make sense in light of our contemporary scientific understanding of the universe. A long-standing principle of religious liberalism is that a religious meaning-making structure should not be isolated from the other cultural currents that flow alongside them. Only in this wider context can religion continue to speak to the real needs of people in their contemporary situation." And now is the time for us to express our gratitude for this community and its imagination, its work, its vision, all the ways in which it nourishes our lives, from the physical building and gardens to the outreach of the wider community, for the technology and the people who are making this service and other virtual gatherings happen. For all these things and for the ways in it works its magic in our lives, this morning's offering for the ongoing mission of this congregation will be gratefully received. Start the year off by making a contribution today. Don't wait until the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the year. Mail a check to the address on the screen or donate on our website at uunaples.org. I don't know, but if you're like me, it was very hard to stay still while Stu was playing that number. I'm sure wherever you are, you've got to have been moving a little bit. The next reading is from the editor of The Hypertext. His name is Michael Birch. And Hypertext is an online poetry journal. Birch is a devotee of Albert Einstein and an admirer of how Einstein used poetic language. The following reading is comprised of quotations by Einstein that Birch combined into the form of a poem, changing a word here and there for the sake of meter and rhyme, while hopefully preserving the reason. Imagination. Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Information is not knowledge, and yet knowledge is still limited, for knowledge of what is does not open the door directly to what it should be. Yes, logic may get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. Imagination encircles the world. Imagination is everything. I'm enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination and to raise new questions, new possibilities. To regard old problems from new angles requires creative imagination and marks real advance in science. Thus, the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination.
I drove to work this morning early and watched the sunrise in the east over the trees. It was beautiful. The sun lighting up the clouds at first and then appearing on the horizon. I drove along and thought about all the sunrises of the past and all the creatures, human and otherwise, who have observed the sunrise and understood that another day begins, both in its immediate need and in its wonder. Wonder. It's a remarkable ability that at least we know human beings have, and perhaps other creatures as well. To wonder at the rising sun or at the crescent moon, at a mighty wind, the power, the quiet of nature. Wonder fuels curiosity. Why? Why does the sun rise every morning? Why does the earth create such incredible storms that threaten and scare me? Why are we here? How do we fit in? Science, both science and religion, are human activities. Science is an intellectual and practical activity, a systematic activity based on observation and experimentation. We look for and study the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world. We try to understand why things happen. We pose a question. We develop a possibility, a hypothesis. We test that. We analyze what happens when we test it, and we do that over and over. And then when we're ready, we share that news with somebody else, and they maybe look at the same thing and test it and then either confirm or reject what we're saying. That is the scientific method, developed over the course of thousands of years. Aristotle certainly understood the method, and certainly during the Enlightenment, that method was refined and more generally agreed upon. Science also, in doing this, takes into account our less than perfect brains. We can, when we look at the results of an experiment, or even as we suggest a possibility, be influenced by our own desires, our own wants to be right. And so the scientific method allows for the review of our understanding by others. And that peer review allows it to be checked and double-checked until it emerges as a truth for all people to know and understand. Science has supplanted religion as a better way to understand the world around us, to answer some of the big questions of our human existence. How did this whole thing start? Science theorizes that it started with a grand singularity. And even that makes us wonder, what does that mean? How do we envision that? And that's where imagination comes in. Religion has tried to answer all those questions in the past and has come up with its own answers. All the various religions of the world, or most anyway, have struggled to find a story that answers our curiosity about how things began and why we're here and what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life. Every time I say that, I think of the Monty Python movie. But we care about the meaning of life. We are meaning-making creatures. We strive to understand ourselves in this world. We strive to understand all that goes on around us. The Reverend Forrest Church, who served Unitarian All Souls Church in New York City until his death in 2009, said on numerous occasions that religion is the human response to being alive and having to die. Here I am, but I'm going to die. What does it all mean? Religion has posited answers to that question that satisfy the emotions of many people, that give people an opportunity to understand themselves in relation to God and others. And the answers that religion has posed satisfy a certain need and make people feel emotionally comfortable. And so when science comes along to supplant many of those ideas, there is a struggle. We're facing that kind of struggle today, although, as you'll hear in a minute, it's not quite as bad as it may seem. But it has been a struggle. There's always been a tension between religion and science. And so we've had to understand that. As I mentioned earlier, Unitarian Universalism fully believes that the two must be compatible for a realistic worldview, but not so for other faiths and traditions. We are facing a time of what seems to be greater denial of science. But as I said, the good news is that we need to look a lot closer at the information available to us about that before we get too hot under the collar. And we need to accept our own responsibility, too, in making some of that happen. So first of all, the good news is that more than 80% of the American populace believes that science is a good thing and has done great things both for our advancement as a society and as a nation. Christians, who, when asked, mostly say that there's, let me put it this way, over 60% say that there is a conflict between religion and science in their religion, in general. But specifically when asked about their lives and a conflict between religion and science, almost half of that number say 35%, or only 35% say that there's a conflict. So a large number of the population of the United States, in terms of a religious belief, do not sense that conflict as imminent. And when they do, they're very specific about what it is they are conflicted about. And many times it's the ethics of the administration of technology that results from science. We think about abortion as one of the major issues that people have a problem with. Also, one of the real issues is that people's identity get wrapped up in a certain position, a certain worldview. And it's hard to give that up, especially when it's reinforced over and over again, both by people in positions of power and by media, so that if the position of a large group of people expresses a denial in certain science that speaks to the environment, for instance, to go against that is to go against the identity that you've accepted. And that's very, very hard. What it takes, I think, in the long run, for those of us who are invested in the work of science and its contributions not only to our lives, but to our meaning-making, is that we understand, first of all, how difficult that is, and second of all, we understand that in communicating about science, we need to do a better job. It needs to be more than rote. It needs to be more than a subject that you have to take in school. It needs to be infused with a sense of wonder, with a passion for the realities that exist, but also with an understanding of what that means and how we can make meaning from it. We are meaning-making creatures. We can't avoid it. And to create a meaning has an emotional aspect, as Paul Razor talked about. So it's difficult to give that up. That is even true for liberal-minded people. When presented with a case that goes against our way of thinking, even if it has scientific merit, we are slow to accept it. We are human beings, after all. So the reality is that science denial tends to be much more specific about certain things, and second of all, not as prevalent as we may hope, and therefore we have hope as we move into the future to change the way that we are thinking about it and to change the way that the rest of the world thinks about it. And using our imagination, we need to consider how better to talk about the impact of science in our lives and our society. When I talk about we have our own issues around this, it's often perceived that, take for example the pandemic, that those people who are suggesting that we stay at home, that we work at home, are those that can more easily do that and work at home, whereas people who are work in manufacturing facilities and in grocery stores and on the front line cannot do that. It also seems then that the people with that ability to work at home can avoid the risks that others have to take. And so there's an anger that's involved in that, and that anger has a certain backlash. So we have to understand that how we present information is critical, both in terms of scientific understanding and in terms of a real understanding and a political understanding of what's happening in the world. Albert Einstein also said that science without religion is lame, and that religion without science is blind, and whoever undertakes to establish himself as the judge of truth and knowledge is shipwrecked by the laughter of the gods. So a certain humility has to be infused in all we do and all we think and all we say about science. He also said that the difference between stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits, and that an intellectual solves a problem, a genius avoids it. So scientists, at least those with a degree of humility, while recognizing the gifts that science have brought, understand too that science is only one tool in our continuing quest to understand ourselves and each other as we seek to live and share the earth with one another. As I said earlier, our Unitarian Universalist tradition counsels us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. It also counsels us to understand earth-based traditions that teach us about living in rhythm with the earth, and the words and deeds of prophetic women and men who have spoken truth throughout history, and the important aspects of world religions that teach us ethics through story. It also teaches us to honor our own emotions, our own sense of wonder, that transcendent feeling that many of us have at various times in our life. Pay attention to that. Those are all good sources of truth. None should be outside the realm of scientific understanding necessarily. We hold that a meaningful religious perspective can be fully compatible with science. And after all, science helps us understand that the fabric of all things, from the stars in the heavens to the living cells within our own bodies, is concerned with nature. And so far from reducing religious or spiritual endeavors to something irrelevant, we believe that the wonders of the universe, the wonders of science, known and unknown, lead us to a deeper reverence and clearer understanding of our place in the interdependent web of all things, which is the starting point for creating that meaningful life. If we believe fully that we are part of a whole, then we have responsibility to the whole. I'll close again with Albert Einstein, who wrote, "The life of the individual has meaning only insofar as it aids in the making of life of every living thing nobler and more beautiful." I'll repeat that. The life of the individual has meaning only insofar as it aids in making the life of every living thing nobler and more beautiful. Life is sacred. That is to say, it is the supreme value to which all other values are subordinate. And human beings can attain a worthy and harmonious life only if they are able to rid themselves within the limits of human nature of the striving for fulfillment of material kinds. The goal is to raise the spiritual values of society. A human being, he writes, is part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. A human being experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. And this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task Our task, he writes, must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. The writing of a true scientist. I close today with our usual benediction. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings, and make this, for yourself and for others, a wonderful year